So again, this assignment, the literacy portfolio, comes in all shapes and sizes. I mean, I can't tell you how different these can manifest. And so this one is mine, and let me just sort of get it together, and we'll get going. Okay, so again, my name is Ari Zeiger. I did this last summer. Okay, I came to the Institute last summer. All right. Okay. All right. Let's see what this sounds like here.
You know what it's called?
No.
It's called the Big Orange Spot.
Oh, I know what it's called, the big orange splat.
So I'm lying in bed, my eyes are closed, and my mom's right beside me, reading to me as I fall asleep. This was our nightly ritual. And no matter how many times she read it, I always asked for the same book, night after night, The Big Orange Splat.
This is a neat street, they would say. Then one day...
Now, The Big Orange Splat is about a man who, much to the horror of his neighbors, begins to paint his house to match the anything-goes spirit of his imagination. The book is a love letter to the infectious power of happiness, of individuality, of personal expression. And I still think about this book because my sister now reads The Big Orange Splat to her son, my nephew Lucas. And when I listen to my sister read from this story, it sends me thinking about the power certain books have to shape us, to alter our lives, you know? And this is Grandmaster Flash's The Message. And when this book came out, I was in the 3rd grade, and I never heard anything like it. The music felt inviting and familiar. Grandmaster Flash's The Message, while not a book in the traditional sense, became I knew The Big Orange Splat. This was the text I needed to hear over and over again. And like The Big Orange Splat, this book changed me. The song inspired me to write, to create my own rap lyrics, and I did. I did this day in and day out. During recess at school, all my friends would gather in a circle to beatbox and to freestyle. And of course, as true hip-hops, we had our carefully crafted MC names. And I thought my name was the best. My MC name was Prince Jam. Prince Jam. That was the best name to ever come up with. Prince Jam. 2 syllables. But then one day, Quayle showed up. Quayle was my best friend, and still is my best friend. Okay? And he shows up with a new name. Little Boy Fresh.
Oh, Jock.
This was a game changer, people, because I loved that name. I loved that name so much that, plagiarism be damned, I decided that my name was now also Little Boy Fresh. But how did Quayle respond to this? How did Quayle respond?
But as I recall, I laid Little Boy Fresh out on TV. I'd actually written it in script on a baseball, right in the sweet spot where you put an autograph. So I was just so enamored of this name, and I thought it had so much symmetry to it. Something about it was like it was a long name, but it was a name that would suggest a diminutive size, but of course had something cool in it, and had this little reference to almost like a pony boy kind of name. And as I said, I'd had this vision of this guy who my sister had seen breakdancing, who was younger than everybody else, but blew them all away, surprised them, shocked them. It was almost Muhammad Ali-esque, in that regard. This little diminutive guy who looked like he was a nerd and then was a great breakdancer. I just loved all that. So I always a Little Boy Fresh, and that was the handle that I gave myself. Of course, I laid it on you. You loved it. And as far as I know, you took that shit back to the SR Tribe and wore it like it was your own. As far as I know, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, and of course, at the time I was probably a little pissed off. But on the other hand, take a step back, it's basically, that's how you and I push each other forward. Like we were having tremendous to each other over our lifetimes of stimulating creative thought, of naming the world, of naming ourselves, of forming our identities, of being, of being unique individuals in the world, and trying to process things like culture, like race, like class, like capitalism.
Well, my obsession with rap music continued as my singular passion until one afternoon, sitting at home watching HBO, I discovered a new voice. When I saw Rocky, something happened in me. I saw this guy, this nobody, this lost and lonely nobody, get plucked from obscurity and given a 1 in a million shot at immortality. And I don't know, the way Rocky changes during the fight, I also felt changed. Rocky let go of all his bitterness, all his resentment. He just let it go. And in its place, he knuckles down and begins to train. One man against the world that doesn't give him even the slightest chance to win. But by the time the championship fight comes around, by the time he's done all the work in the ring and gone on all the early morning jogs in the dead of winter, Rocky doesn't care if he wins or loses. He's discovered something far more important than winning. He's discovered self-worth. And so before the first round of the fight, Rocky's already won. We've already won. And so in that film's final scene, there's just this total absence of anything other than raw emotion. So let's listen to the sound of Rocky's voice. I want us to close our eyes, for real. I want us to close our eyes, and we're going to listen to Rocky's voice. Okay? He's so happy that he's crying.
The history of my life. I just want to say one thing. Yo, Adrian! Adrian!
Well, and you can open your eyes. From there, I saw all the Rocky films. The second and the third, but when it was the fourth, when that installment came out, one day I was shopping for groceries with my mom, and I saw Rocky IV, the book. Rocky IV, the book. Do you know what I'm talking about? Those novelizations that they used to make, or perhaps still make, of popular films. So I begged my mom for that book, and I read that book non-stop. Me, reading a book in the 6th or 7th grade would not happen, but I read every single word of that book, because this was another shot, even perhaps with greater access to Rocky's mind, to access his inner emotions, to really get to know him. This guy had been so lost, but through heart and loyalty and honesty had turned it all around. God, I devoured that book. I could not stop reading it. Well, I couldn't almost sort of bear to finish it. So I began to savor the pages, slowly tasting each word. And from that day forward, I had a whole new relationship with books. Suddenly, books weren't the enemy. Suddenly, reading wasn't this thing to get out of the way. Suddenly, if I had a passion, I read as much as I could about it. Because my life as a reader had begun.
Trees, I done something new for this fight. I done wrestled with an alligator. That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
Well, this is in the summer of 1991, and Muhammad Ali comes to my hometown in Berkeley, California. His book, A Life in Times, had just come out, and he was traveling the country to sign his book, to meet the public. And I was 17, and when I heard Ali would be coming to Cody's bookstore on Telegraph Street, I felt like my favorite band decided to play a concert in my backyard. I loved Ali, and it just didn't seem possible to actually get the chance to meet the man, to shake his hand, to stand across the table from him, and make eye contact. For that brief moment before he signed me my book back and handed it to me, this thing he'd now blessed. Now, the book A Life in Times, it could not have been more vivid. This book was an oral history. Okay, it was Ali's life, but it was told through interviews from the people who had raised him, who had trained him, who had fought him, who loved him, hated him, photographed him, wrote about him. And this book was, 550 pages, the longest book up until that point I'd ever read. And so I remember feeling this sense of accomplishment, that I had earned something by reading a book that was, over 500 pages. And about this guy who was so outspoken about his individuality, had this limitless heart. The book didn't make me want to be a boxer. It made me want to be a better person. And so I've been reading books about Ali ever since. I went after that, a few years later, I read the book by David Remnick, who's the editor-in-chief of The New Yorker, called King of the World. And then I read a book by Norman Mailer, who wrote an entire book just on this one fight that Ali had with George Foreman. And the book is just called The Fight. Okay, I went and I read that. And from that, I got introduced to narrative nonfiction, or literary journalism. And then that's how I found this guy's voice.
There was madness in any direction, at any hour. You could strike sparks anywhere.
This is Hunter Thompson.
There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right, that we were winning. And that, I think, was the handle. That sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energy would simply prevail. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. So now, less than 5 years later, you can go up on a steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark. That place where the wave finally broke and rolled back.
And what I really loved about Hunter S. Thompson's work, and still love, is he uses hyperbole. But he doesn't just exaggerate things, he takes the truth and he exaggerates the truth. And that's really a type of voice that I really connected to, or sort of literary trope, is idea of hyperbole, not just as something we study and can, on the LEAP test, we can identify the author's use of hyperbole, but that we actually tell the truth in a more exaggerated way, but it's still sincere. That's really what I connected to in Thompson's work. And then as an undergrad, I just sat down for a poetry class. The instructor's name was David St. John, and he walks in and he says, "Poetry is your chance to rename the world." And I wrote that down. Probably the first time I've ever written anything one of my teachers had ever said, ever. Okay? Unbidden, you know? And I still don't know what David St. John means by that. However, there's just something about the way that David St. John, and I went and took him every other class he ever taught, and sort of still in contact with him. Whenever I have like some win, I'll always like forward it to him. Just something about the way he spoke about the craft spoke to my heart. So I want to play you just a little bit of how he sounds when he talks, David St. John.
A writer doesn't grow without taking risks. The greatest risk is to write something so far outside your comfort zone. I continue to write in order to discover what I will write next. If I knew what I was going to write next, I would stop. What would be the point? And I think you'll hear many writers say that. The risk involved is doing something unfamiliar, doing something, especially after one has established a certain presence as a particular writer, doing something that seems unlike yourself.
So I love David St. John. So I have two more clips for you to play. One is probably the first mentor text that I was ever conscious of, like consciously understood I was trying to write in this way, was I listened to a Beastie Boys album, and they said, "Reading on the Road" by my man Jack Kerouac. I was like, what was that? You know? And so I went and I walked into a bookstore. Do you have On the Road by Jack Kerouac? And the guy like kind of gave it to me. And here's a little short clip of Jack Kerouac reading his own work. And you can sort of imagine as like a 23-year-old guy living in California, sort of really hooking into this type of cadence.
Now it's jazz. The place is roaring. All beautiful girls in there. One mad brunette at the bar, drunk with her boys. One strange chick I remember from somewhere wearing a simple skirt with pockets, her hands in there, short haircut, slouched, talking to everybody. Up and down the stairs they come. The bartenders are the regular band of Jack and the heavenly drummer who looks up in the sky with blue eyes, with a beard. He's wailing beer caps of bottles and jamming at the cash register, and everything is going to the beat. It's the beat generation. It's Bayat. It's the beat to keep. It's the beat of the heart. It's being beat and down in the world, and like old-time lowdown, and like an ancient...
So the final clip I'll play for you is something that ties back into me as a teacher. You know, we're always trying to teach our students to write more persuasively, to write argument, to be critical thinkers. Because on some level you can measure that or grade that, this idea of persuasion. Are they supporting their claims, right, with good reasons? But there's something that has to happen before that, which you can't really measure, and that's voice. That's the author's engagement. And Malcolm Gladwell speaks about that in this clip, and this has been something that's been very helpful for me as a teacher, because as much as I always want to teach my students to be persuasive, I have to remember that there's something before you're persuasive, which is where you're making a sincere and honest attempt to engage your reader and engage yourself in your own writing. I think Gladwell really speaks to that in this clip.
Along the way, writing has never ceased to be fun, and I hope that buoyant spirit is evident in these pieces. Nothing frustrates me more than someone who reads something of mine or someone else's and says angrily, "I don't buy it." Why are they angry? Good writing does not succeed or fail on the strength of its ability to persuade. Not the kind of writing that you'll find in this book anyway. It succeeds or fails on the strength of its ability to engage you, to make you think, to give you a glimpse into someone else's head, even if the end result is that you conclude that someone else's head is not a place you'd really like to be. I've called these stories adventures because that's what they are intended to be. Enjoy yourself.
And so as I close here, I would just say that what I'm looking forward to for this summer is learning from you all how I can better help my students use writing to engage the audience.